Today, we have an exciting story featuring Clara Mendez, a teacher who experienced a life-changing moment. She'll share how this moment transformed her life and faith. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the upcoming stories. Now, let's hear this incredible story. My name is Clara Mendez, and I've always considered myself an ordinary person living an ordinary life. I teach English in a small-town high school nestled in the heartland of the country. The town is quiet, filled with people I've known since childhood, and every morning I walk the familiar path to my classroom. My students, though sometimes challenging, bring meaning to my life. Over the years, I've developed routines and created a sense of predictability that brings me comfort. Yet, beneath this calm surface, I carry worries that most people around me might not guess. Sometimes, in the quiet moments of the night, I feel an emptiness gnawing at me, a sense of, is this all there is? I find myself praying silently, holding on to a faith that I don't often talk about openly. My life feels safe and peaceful on the surface, but I grapple with small, gnawing doubts, questions about purpose, meaning, and what truly lies ahead. I look around at my family, my colleagues, and my friends, who seem to manage their lives so effortlessly, and wonder if they, too, carry these hidden burdens. One ordinary Thursday, after a particularly draining day at school, I found myself standing alone in the school's parking lot, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The sky was just beginning to darken, and I paused to take a breath. It was a feeling that seemed to linger, heavier, as if something in the air had changed. Little did I know that this quiet moment of solitude would be the last thing I would remember of the life I knew. As my world was about to turn upside down in the most unimaginable way, I remember a sudden, sharp pain in my chest, so intense that it felt like my heart had been gripped in a vice. It stole my breath away, leaving me gasping and clutching my chest as the world blurred around me. The parking lot, dimly lit in the evening light, seemed to tilt, and I staggered, reaching out to steady myself, though nothing was there to hold on to. My heart was racing, then slowing, an erratic rhythm that made me feel as though I was slipping underwater, deeper with each passing second. I collapsed, knees hitting the ground as my vision dimmed, and I could hear distant, panicked voices as my colleagues rushed toward me. Someone was calling my name, their voice full of fear. I heard footsteps pounding against the concrete, and I felt the faintest sensation of hands lifting me, voices calling for help, someone yelling to dial 911. It was surreal, like watching a scene from a movie I couldn't quite place myself in. My vision narrowed, the sounds faded, and then silence. In that silence, I felt a strange release, as if I were leaving my body behind. There was no pain, only peace, a calmness that seemed to wash over me like a gentle wave. I was floating, watching the scene unfold from above. My body lay sprawled on the ground, surrounded by familiar faces filled with panic and fear. I saw my friend, Janice, crying as she held my hand, whispering, "Clara, please, stay with us." Her desperation was palpable, but I felt strangely detached, almost serene, as I observed it all from a distance. I wanted to reassure her, to tell her I was okay, even though I was hovering above, gazing down at a version of myself I barely recognized. As I hovered above, observing everything from a vantage point that was impossible yet so vividly real, a profound calm settled over me. The frantic voices, the hurried footsteps, Janice's pleading words, all of it seemed distant, muffled, like background noise to an unearthly stillness that enveloped me. It was as though I was in two places at once, a silent, serene space above, and the chaotic, desperate scene below. The parking lot, the school building, even the faces of those I knew so well. Everything had an ethereal glow, as if seen through a filter of light and clarity that was both beautiful and surreal. For a brief moment, I questioned my reality. Was this truly happening, or was my mind fabricating this strange dream? But the details were too sharp, too precise, to be anything less than real. I could see Janice's face streaked with tears, the trembling of her hands as she gripped my limp fingers. I watched another colleague, Mr. Thompson, dial emergency services, his voice quivering as he described my symptoms. In that instant, I felt an overwhelming urge to reach out to them, to comfort them, to say, "It's okay. I'm here." But I was not there in the way I once had been. My words, my thoughts, none of it could reach them. Instead, I felt myself pulled further away, drawn toward a soft, encompassing light that beckoned me with an inexplicable warmth. It was like being embraced by love itself, an unconditional presence that calmed every worry and fear I'd ever had. The boundaries of who I was began to blur, and all the questions, doubts, and fears that had once gnawed at me faded. The awareness that I was not alone, that something greater was with me, filled me with a peace that words could never capture. And as I drifted further into this light, my old life felt like a distant memory, something I no longer needed to cling to. As I floated deeper into that radiant light, a figure began to take shape before me, a presence so peaceful, yet powerful, that I felt a mix of awe and comfort just by being near it. The light seemed to grow brighter around him, a soft, golden glow that enveloped him like a halo. I sensed an energy from him that was unlike anything I'd ever encountered on Earth. It was as though love, kindness, and compassion were woven into his very essence. And somehow, instinctively, I knew his name. "Raphael?" "Clara," he said gently, his voice resonating within me rather than around me, filling me with a warmth that washed away any lingering fears. His gaze was both piercing and soft, carrying a depth of understanding that made me feel completely seen and known. In his presence, I felt no need to explain myself or my struggles. He already understood them, as though he had been beside me through every step of my life, every joy and every sorrow. "Where am I?" I asked, my voice feeling strange in this space, almost like a thought rather than a spoken word. "You are in a place beyond your world, but not beyond life," he answered, his words laced with a calm assurance that settled my heart. "I am here to show you something important, Clara, something that will help you understand the power that exists within you. Through the Spirit." He reached out his hand, and without hesitation, I took it, feeling an immediate surge of warmth and strength flow into me. As we moved together, it felt as though the boundaries of time and space dissolved. Every worry, every lingering question about who I was or what my purpose might be faded away, replaced by a sense of belonging and purpose that I had never felt so profoundly. I sensed that Raphael wasn't merely guiding me. He was revealing a truth that had always been within me but had gone unnoticed in the busyness of my earthly life. In his presence, I felt ready to confront whatever he wished to show me. Holding Raphael's hand, I was transported into a realm where scenes from different lives and moments unfurled around us. It was as though we were floating through a series of memories, though they weren't mine. Each scene appeared vividly, alive with color, emotion, and movement, yet somehow layered with a deeper meaning. I felt an unmistakable power radiating from these scenes, a divine energy that seemed to pulse through each moment, connecting them all like threads of an intricate tapestry. Raphael's voice echoed gently beside me. "I am here to show you how the Spirit moves, Clara. This is the work of the Spirit in the lives of those who believe, transforming, strengthening, and guiding them." The first scene appeared before us, clear as day. A man stood alone, looking lost and defeated, his face drawn and weary. I could feel his despair, his sense of hopelessness, as if it were my own. But then, as if touched by an unseen force, he lifted his head, his eyes brightening with renewed resolve. I watched in amazement as he began to change, his posture straightening, his face softening with newfound peace. Raphael's voice broke the silence. "This is the Spirit's power of transformation. It brings hope where there was despair, strength where there was weakness." In that moment, I understood the profound impact of this transformation. It wasn't a grand display of miracles, but a quiet, gentle shift within the man's heart that changed everything for him. I realized how often I had missed these subtle miracles in my own life, moments when an inner strength, a quiet encouragement, had guided me through difficult times. I looked at Raphael, my heart swelling with understanding and gratitude, and he nodded, as if reading my thoughts. This was only the beginning. There was so much more he wanted to show me. The next moment felt like being drawn deeper into the heart of that first scene. As I looked closer, I could see the man's life unfolding before me, each struggle and small victory shaping him in ways he hadn't noticed at the time. I could feel his moments of doubt, the nights he'd spent wondering if he was on the right path. Yet, with each challenge, a quiet resilience had grown within him, like a seed planted in darkness that eventually pushes through to find the light. "Look at him closely, Clara," Raphael said softly, his voice carrying a hint of urgency. "This is what transformation through the Spirit truly is. It's a change that happens deep inside, often unseen, guiding a person back to hope and purpose." I watched as the man faced obstacles, financial hardships, loss of loved ones, moments of sheer loneliness. But in each instance, something in him grew stronger, more compassionate, more understanding. The transformation wasn't about changing his circumstances. It was about changing his heart, making him resilient and grounded, able to face life with an unshakable inner peace. His journey was far from perfect, filled with stumbles and doubts, but each step he took seemed more certain, guided by a force that was steady and unwavering. I began to understand how similar I was to this man, how often I had faced struggles in silence, believing I was alone. Raphael's gaze met mine, a quiet strength in his eyes. "This transformation is available to everyone who believes, Clara. It's the Spirit's way of reminding us that we are never truly alone, that there's a power within us that can carry us through even the darkest nights." I felt the words settle deep within me, touching parts of my heart that had been closed off, guarded. I realized how much I needed this reminder, how often I had overlooked the quiet work of the Spirit in my own life. As the scene shifted, I found myself enveloped in another memory, one that radiated a deep sense of calm and confidence. This time, I saw a young woman kneeling by her bedside, her hands clasped tightly in prayer. Her face was lit by a soft glow, her expression peaceful yet determined. I could feel her heartbeat, steady, unwavering, filled with a certainty that seemed to defy the trials she faced. There was a strength in her faith that felt almost tangible, a quiet assurance that settled over her like a protective shield. Raphael's voice broke through the stillness, filled with a reverence that made me realize how precious this moment was. "This is the gift of certainty, the Spirit's promise of faith and salvation. It's what holds a believer steady in times of doubt, what gives them courage when all else seems lost." I watched as the young woman continued to pray, even as shadows seemed to gather around her, the weight of her struggles pressing down. Yet, in the midst of it all, her faith remained untouched, a flame that refused to be extinguished. She wasn't praying for an end to her troubles. She was praying for the strength to endure them, to walk through the storm with a confidence that only faith could bring. It was as if she knew, beyond a doubt, that she was held by something far greater than herself, a love that would never abandon her. I felt a surge of humility and awe. How often had I wavered in my own faith, questioning whether I was truly seen, truly valued. Watching this young woman, I realized that faith wasn't about having all the answers or never feeling doubt. It was about holding on, trusting in something larger than oneself, even when the way forward seemed unclear. Raphael's gaze was gentle as he spoke again. "Faith isn't the absence of fear, Clara. It's the presence of trust. It's knowing, deep down, that you are loved and held, even when the world around you feels uncertain." The words resonated within me, settling into places I didn't know needed healing. This assurance was something I had longed for, and in this moment, I knew I had found it. The light around us shifted again, and I found myself in a crowded, bustling street. People were moving hurriedly, their faces etched with stress and distraction. In the midst of this crowd, a young man stood, his eyes kind and filled with purpose. He was speaking to a small group, offering words of comfort and encouragement. His voice was soft but clear, and those around him seemed drawn to his presence, as if he carried a quiet power that lifted their spirits. I watched him reach out to a man who looked weary and worn, handing him a small loaf of bread and a bottle of water. The man's eyes filled with tears as he accepted the gift, mumbling a thank you that was barely audible. But the young man simply smiled, his hand resting on the man's shoulder in a gesture of genuine compassion. His kindness was effortless, a natural extension of who he was. Raphael's voice was filled with admiration. This is the Spirit's work through love and service, Clara. It's the courage to step outside oneself, to see others not as strangers but as brothers and sisters, each deserving of compassion and dignity. As I continued to observe, I felt a swell of emotion rising within me. The young man wasn't seeking recognition or reward. He was driven by a deep, selfless love, one that was rooted in something far beyond himself. He moved from person to person, offering food, encouragement, a kind word, small gestures that seemed to carry the weight of something far greater. I realized then that this love wasn't just an emotion. It was an action, a choice to serve others, even when it was inconvenient or unnoticed. Raphael turned to me, his eyes filled with a wisdom that pierced through me. To love and serve others is to live in harmony with the Spirit, to be a vessel of His grace in a world that often forgets compassion. This is the calling for all who believe, Clara, not to be perfect, but to be willing to give of themselves for the sake of another. In that moment, I understood a profound truth, that every act of love, no matter how small, was sacred, a reflection of the divine. I felt a deep conviction settle within me, a realization that I, too, was called to live in this way, to let love guide my actions and serve as a beacon for others. And for the first time, I felt the stirrings of a purpose that went beyond my own life, a purpose rooted in the Spirit's calling to love deeply and serve willingly. As the last revelation faded, I felt an inexplicable pull, as if something was gently drawing me back. The ethereal light around Raphael dimmed, and a sense of gravity took hold of me. I turned to him, my heart aching with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. I didn't want to leave this place, this peace, this clarity. It felt like I was saying goodbye to a piece of myself I'd only just discovered. Raphael looked at me with a soft smile. "It's time to return, Clara. You've seen what you needed to see, but your journey isn't over yet. There's more for you to do, more lives to touch." His words were a gentle reminder that my time here was a gift, a glimpse into something greater, but not the end. He reached out, touching my shoulder, and I felt a surge of warmth, a final blessing that filled every part of me. The light around us grew brighter, and suddenly, I was pulled backward, faster and faster, through a tunnel of light and color. I could feel myself descending, the weight of my body returning, grounding me once more. Then, in an instant, I was back in the cold, sterile reality of the physical world. My chest rose with a painful gasp as air filled my lungs, and the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room flooded my vision. Machines beeped frantically around me, and I could hear voices calling my name, urgent and relieved. I blinked, my senses slowly adjusting, as my hand found Janice's, still holding tight even now. Her tear-streaked face broke into a smile as she whispered, "You're back, Clara. Thank God you're back." I looked into her eyes, feeling a strange, newfound calm settle within me. I wasn't the same person who had collapsed in that parking lot. I was changed, transformed by the journey I just experienced. A deep peace filled me, resonating in every corner of my soul, and I knew that everything I'd seen, everything I'd been shown, was now a part of me. Though I was back in the physical world, I carried within me a renewed sense of purpose and an unshakable peace. In the days that followed my return, life felt both familiar and profoundly different. I resumed my routines, teaching classes, preparing lessons, catching up with friends. But the world around me seemed sharper, filled with layers of meaning I had previously overlooked. Every interaction, every quiet moment felt like a precious opportunity. I found myself cherishing the small gestures, a warm smile, a comforting word, the laughter of my students, as reflections of the Spirit's presence, woven into the fabric of daily life. The first time I tried to share my experience was with Janice. Sitting across from her at my kitchen table, I struggled to find the right words, the language to explain what I'd witnessed, what I'd felt. How could I describe Raphael's presence, the revelations, the profound peace that now anchored me? She listened intently, her face a mixture of awe and disbelief, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of understanding. When I finished, she reached across the table, taking my hand in hers, her voice soft. "Clara, I don't fully understand, but I believe you. I can see the change in you, feel it even." With each conversation, I began to find more clarity, my words flowing with greater ease as I recounted my journey. Friends, colleagues, even my students sensed a difference in me. They asked what had happened, drawn to the calm I exuded, the newfound gentleness that colored my interactions. Some were curious, some skeptical, but I welcomed every question, every opportunity to share the truths I had seen. Slowly, my purpose took shape. I wasn't meant to preach or convince others of my experience. Instead, I was here to embody it, to live out the love, faith, and transformation I had witnessed. I began volunteering at a local shelter, offering comfort to those who felt lost, sharing quiet moments with those in need. Every act of kindness, every word of encouragement felt like a small echo of Raphael's guidance, a reflection of the Spirit's call to love and serve others. In the quiet of my heart, I knew this was only the beginning. The journey I had experienced was now the foundation of a life lived with intention, faith, and a love that reached beyond myself. I had returned with a mission, not to change the world in grand gestures, but to touch lives in small, meaningful ways, letting the Spirit's work continue through me. And as I walked forward, I carried with me the deep peace of knowing that I was never truly alone, guided by the quiet, unwavering presence of the Spirit. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and watch this next story. It's incredibly moving.